You know, I think the CEO has to, has to be the person to really kind of show the leadership at the beginning, because it's not an easy thing to do. Especially, the reason I was brought in to run Sprint was that kind of Sprint's business fortunes were declining and going in the wrong direction. And it's much simpler for a company to undertake CSR initiatives of any kind, whether it's philanthropy or green, things that don't have a quick payback when things are going really well. Sure. And it's more difficult when the economy's difficult, or in our case when we had some tough turnaround decisions to make. But people want to do the right thing, and so it really wasn't that difficult, because as you say, the seeds were already sown, where we had a very environmentally oriented campus, and the technology and the business lent itself very well. So one of the opportunities I had in coming in was defining what I wanted our company to stand for. One of the things exercises I went through is, what do I want the Sprint brand to stand for, internally, externally, because the brand is really everything. It's your company culture, it's your products and services, it's your CSR and what have you. And I think I viewed it, of course, I have two young boys that are 11 and 15. I'm exposed to, if you will, a younger generation where these kinds of issues are very, very important. So quite frankly, it was just in our interest to do so. So it was the time, if you were going to make it important for the company and you were laying out a new brand, okay, and a new culture to make it a core element. I'm also huge on measurements, always have been. I mean, stuff gets done that's measured, and stuff that's not measured doesn't get done. I mean, that's not rocket science. So it was also an opportunity to put some of that in place.
Did your kids lobby you to go green at the company?
Honestly, no, they didn't.
Or educate
but they
you,
or
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're exposed to it all the time. But honestly, the company I ran before that, I had a chance to start with a new brand, and I picked green as a color, and focused on green. Maybe it's living in Europe for 10 years, where I think the green initiatives are just so much more recognized. It's so much more important because you have so many more people. Yeah. I lived in the Netherlands for 5 years, where they're worried about getting, global warming is a much bigger issue for them because they're below sea level. And I think that was part of it as well. I think the exposure in Europe, where you recycled everything, where energy and gas were really expensive and highly taxed, so you focused on conserving. It was very much in my DNA.
And how about your own compensation? Is your sustainability part of your own comp? Is it part of the compensation of your team, sustainability goals built into what they do?
I wish it was. It's not. We have, we've set the goals. They're important. They're measurable, but they're not part of the compensation system. But it's actually a good point. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be.
Hi there, Chris Page from Yahoo. So I'm wondering if you have an example of a place where this desire to really build and nurture a values-driven company around sustainability has come into conflict with the really overwhelming pressure for immediate quarterly shareholder value.
The issue from an economic return it's real all the time when we look at, for example, putting solar power on buildings. We typically have not only a rate of return or net present value, but also a payback period when you look at an investment. And I think the CEO can give some flexibility to people on meeting those first of all, it's got to have a positive return over time. But let's say a solar panel might take 10 years to get a payback, and you normally require 3 to 4. And the reason that's particularly important is CEOs usually don't last more than 3 or 4 years, so you don't want the next guy to get credit and you get booted because you're the one that made the investment. But those kinds of things come up all the time. And so you can stretch, if you will, the normal returns, but only so far. And where the government can be helpful are things like tax policy and incentive and what have you, because until the technology gets to a given point, it is difficult to make even if you do stretch, you can stretch them so far, but you can't do something that's uneconomic.
When we look to the future, when you look to the future, there's a lot of talk about what the cost of energy and oil is going to be. That sort of thing. Energy is an important. Data centers, a big factor. So, what sort of tools do you look at, and what do you think how much of that is on your radar in terms of looking at future costs of energy and affecting your business?
Well, it's difficult to predict what the cost of energy is going to be. I think it will be and should be more expensive than it is today. I think energy, quite frankly, is too inexpensive to get the kind of savings that we ought to get the environmental orientation that we should. I've always believed this is not a Sprint view. This is a Dan Hesse view. I think we should tax energy more than we do, similar to what the Europeans do. It's amazing how much more gas you save when it's $6 a gallon than when it's $3 a gallon. You think about it very, very differently. And
you ever thought about running for Congress?
I think water is too cheap. Pardon?
You ever thought about running for Congress?
Yeah, right. That's the thing. And that's what's
no politician has the courage to say that
because they can't get elected.
Right.
And it's not really
because we won't vote for them.
Because you could be there and you wouldn't. Yeah, exactly. We would not vote. It's really too bad. But if you look at anything from an economic perspective or a logical perspective, it would say combination of things. I don't want to get on my soapbox. You look at our spending as a country and how that's going and the demographics. We have to do something on the revenue side. The most logical place to get the revenues, where you get a twofer, if you will, is to tax energy, because we'd also start saving the planet at the same time, versus other, whether it's income tax or anything else. Again, this is not a Sprint view, but this is my view. If we're going to tax anything, we should tax energy.